Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Ready for a big one today?
I am.
Okay, good. We're tackling a concept that could totally reshape the Middle East. A Middle Eastern trade union.
Or METU for short.
Right, METU. And we're going deep, folks, digging into all sorts of sources, research papers, economic forecasts.
Even some fascinating historical comparisons.
Exactly. We got to see if this ambitious vision could actually work. You know, we're talking a union from the Nile all the way to the Euphrates.
Down to the Gulf of Aden.
And then up to the Black Sea.
It's massive.
Huge, a massive undertaking for sure, but that's what makes it so fascinating, right? What if, and this is a big what if, this union could be the key to peace
And prosperity.
in a region that's faced so many struggles?
It's a region that's really been grappling with ongoing conflicts for sure.
Gaps between the rich and poor.
And you can't forget about resources like water. They're becoming scarcer.
Definitely complex. No easy solutions here.
Not at all.
So let's break down this METU idea.
Get into the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. What are we really talking about?
Well, the sources paint a pretty bold vision.
Okay, I like bold.
We're talking about a unified economic bloc with some big players. Egypt,
Turkey,
Saudi Arabia.
of course.
But it goes beyond that, includes places like Georgia, even Armenia.
Interesting.
The goal is pretty ambitious, create a powerhouse on par with
The EU.
the European Union, exactly.
Okay, now that's a comparison that makes you think.
It does. It does.
Or even BRICS.
Right. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, another major force in the global economy.
Right, the EU. Now that's a comparison that really makes you think. Did they go through something similar after World War II?
You're exactly right. Post-war, Europe was devastated, but they had this radical idea.
What if instead of fighting,
And we started trading with each other.
and bam, the EU was born?
It's fascinating because it wasn't just about the economics.
Right, it went deeper.
It played a massive role in fostering peace and stability across Europe.
And that's the key takeaway here, right? Economic integration, even in a region with a long history of conflict, it can actually be a powerful driver of peace.
Absolutely.
So could that same principle apply to the Middle East? Could METU follow that same path?
That's the big question, and the sources definitely acknowledge the challenges.
Okay, so let's be realistic.
The Middle East, it has a very different history, political landscape, and culture compared to Europe.
Very different.
But, and I think this is important, METU could definitely learn from the EU's journey.
Okay, so learning from both.
The successes and the missteps.
Learn from their mistakes. Why reinvent the wheel, right? Now let's get into the potential benefits here. What could METI actually bring to the table?
Well, imagine enhanced market access for all those member states.
We're talking about a huge market.
Over 500 million people.
It's massive.
Think streamlined trade, joint projects to improve infrastructure, and better management of vital resources.
Like water.
Especially water, which, as we mentioned, is becoming increasingly scarce in the region.
That's a good point. All of this sounds pretty good for the economies involved.
It has the potential, for sure.
Now, what about the strategic implications? This is where it gets really interesting for me. How would METU change the balance of power globally?
That's a great question.
Right?
A more unified Middle East, I think it's safe to say it would have a much stronger voice on the world stage.
It'd have to, right?
Potentially becoming a major player in international trade and diplomacy.
Okay, I can see that.
It could even act as a counterbalance
As-
other emerging economic blocs.
Like BRICS.
Exactly. And of course, there's the potential for increased regional stability.
Which benefits everyone.
It really does.
Okay, so we've got the economic benefits, the strategic benefits, but what about the everyday people? How would METU impact their lives?
That's where the development benefits come in, and this is key.
Okay, tell me more.
Imagine being able to work in any METU country.
Wow, that'd be great.
Improved labor mobility, creating lots of jobs, especially in countries that are really struggling.
Makes sense.
And it could help tackle the brain drain,
Brain drain.
when highly skilled people leave their countries for better opportunities.
I see.
Creating more opportunities within the region means they can stay and contribute to their own communities.
So it's a win-win.
It has that potential, for sure.
Okay, but let's be realistic for a second. This is a massive undertaking, probably the biggest ever.
No doubt about it.
What are some of the obstacles METU would need to overcome?
Well, right away, you've got those political hurdles,
Like,
historical conflicts and tensions.
they run
deep in the region. And the political systems, they vary so much from country to country.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It really is.
Plus, let's not forget about the potential for outside interference.
Absolutely. Other global players, they'd have a vested interest in how this all plays out.
100%.
Then there are those economic disparities.
Right, because we're talking about...
Some of the wealthiest and poorest nations on Earth existing side by side. Bringing those economies together, aligning their policies, finding that balance between competition and cooperation, that's going to be tough.
It sounds almost impossible.
It'll be a huge challenge.
And let's not underestimate those technical challenges. Coordinating regulations, standards, infrastructure across all these different countries. Logistical nightmare.
It really is. Imagine trying to align their digital systems, cybersecurity protocols. It adds a whole other layer of complexity.
So many challenges. But I remember in the source material, they actually propose a pretty interesting solution.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
What if the international community acted as, and I love this term, a supportive concierge to guide the formation of METU?
A concierge, I like that. What's interesting is it's not about imposing solutions.
No, it's about guidance.
Offering support and expertise where needed, but letting regional leaders take ownership from the start.
So it's about learning from history.
Like the post-World War II reconstructions.
Exactly. Think the Marshall Plan, rebuilding Europe.
It was a huge investment, but ultimately led to a more stable and prosperous world.
Could something similar work for MET?
The sources seem to think so, and they emphasize this isn't about charity or control.
It's about recognizing that a stable, prosperous Middle East, it's in everyone's best interest.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. But what are the key ingredients for success here? What would make or break this METU vision?
Well, first and foremost, you need robust peace-building mechanisms.
So we're talking
Regular high-level meetings between leaders.
clear protocols for conflict prevention.
And joint security initiatives.
Yeah.
Build that trust and cooperation.
Before you can even think about the economics.
Exactly. You can't build a house on shaky ground, right?
Love that analogy. So what about the economic side of things?
You need those solid economic foundations. Agreements for sharing resources, development funds to support less developed regions, and joint investment projects to make sure everyone benefits.
You want everyone to benefit,
Think of it like this. A rising tide lifts all boats.
not just the yachts. I love that. It can't just be about economics and politics, though, right?
Yeah.
What about the people?
That's why social integration is so vital. Educational exchanges, recognizing qualifications across borders, cultural cooperation.
Even simple things like youth engagement programs.
They can go a long way in building bridges between societies.
Breaking down barriers.
And to truly succeed on the world stage, METU would need unified external relations.
So, speaking with...
One voice in trade negotiations, coordinating diplomatic positions, maybe even collective security arrangements.
Wow, we're talking about...
A serious level of commitment.
And coordination.
But if it works,
The payoff could be huge.
imagine a Middle East known for its economic strength, innovation, its cultural contributions.
That's a big shift.
It's that transformative potential we're talking about.
All right, listeners, we've laid out the vision
The potential?
and the challenges.
For sure.
Now, we're going to dive into some compelling historical parallels
That might just shed some light.
on METU's possible future. Stay tuned. We were just talking about METU's potential, but also all those challenges
Huge challenges.
to really get a sense of if this could work.
If it's even feasible.
Yeah, let's look at some historical parallels, maybe some inspiration from the past.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. There's one comparison that really stands out, and this one might surprise you.
Okay, I'm ready to be surprised.
The Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
ASEAN.
ASEAN, exactly.
Okay, remind me, ASEAN, what's their story? What makes them relevant here?
We'll go back to 1967.
Okay, way back.
A group of Southeast Asian countries.
Okay.
And they weren't exactly the best of friends.
Oh.
They had their own baggage, conflicts, political differences, economic gaps.
Starting to sound a little familiar.
Right. Kind of reminds you of the Middle East today.
Definitely some parallels. So how did they manage to pull it off? Create a union despite all that?
Persistence, and they started small.
Okay, so a gradual approach.
Focusing on areas where they could agree, like trade, economic development. Smart.
It was all about building trust
Step by step.
through agreements, initiatives.
With crawl, walk, run approach.
Exactly.
And over time, they became a major player.
In the region, I mean.
Oh, yeah. Today, ASEAN is a major economic and political force.
Impressive.
They still have their challenges, of course, but they've shown that regional integration, even in a part of the world with a complex history, it is possible.
Okay, that's actually really encouraging.
Right.
Sounds like METU could learn a lot from their journey.
Right.
But let's shift gears for a second. We've talked a lot about the upside, the potential benefits, but what about the risks?
Yeah, there are always risks.
Are there any downsides to forming a union that big, that powerful?
Well, of course, any major undertaking like this comes with risks, and one concern is that a few powerful countries,
They could try to dominate.
they could end up dominating METU, leading to resentment, instability, especially among the smaller members.
Yeah, it's like any group project, right?
Right.
There's always that one person who tries to take over, call the shots.
It happens.
So how do you prevent that with something as big as an EU?
That's where good governance comes in,
Okay, so,
and a real commitment to fairness.
right.
Remember those institutions we talked about earlier, like a potential METU commission, a council of ministers, maybe even a regional parliament?
I do.
They would need to be set up in a way that makes sure all member states have a voice,
Regardless of.
their size, their economic power.
So it's about checks and balances.
Exactly. Making sure no one country gets too much control.
What other potential risks should we be thinking about?
Another concern is that the focus on just the economics,
It could overshadow.
it could overshadow the need for social and political reform.
Oh, I see. So you could end up with
You could end up with a union that's wealthy, but not very democratic.
where the economic progress doesn't really trickle down.
Doesn't translate to social justice, political freedom.
Right, because economic growth doesn't magically solve all of society's problems.
That's why it's so vital for METU to prioritize not just the economic integration, but also social development, strengthening democratic institutions within each member state.
It's about creating a union that's both prosperous and just.
A union that benefits all of its citizens.
Right, it all comes back to that people-centered approach we talked about earlier, making sure everyone benefits, not just a select few at the top.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Potential benefits, the challenges, looked at ASEAN, and even discussed some of the risks involved. Now I want to step back, look at the big picture here.
I like where you're going with this.
If METU were to actually become a reality,
Hypothetically.
yeah, what kind of impact do you think it would have on the world stage?
That's a big question, and it's tough to predict anything with certainty.
Sure, but let's speculate a little.
Okay, I'm game.
Would it shift the balance of power? Would it change how the Middle East is perceived globally?
Well, I think it's safe to say a successful MTU would be a game changer.
Okay, give me some specifics. Paint me a picture of this new world order.
All right, well, for starters, it would likely lead to a much more stable and predictable Middle East.
Okay, I like the sound of that.
Less conflict means fewer humanitarian crises, reduced refugee flows, lower risk of terrorism impacting other parts of the world.
So potentially a safer world for everyone.
Yes, potentially. But it's not just about security. A unified Middle East, they would also have a much stronger voice in global affairs,
Imagine them.
becoming a major player in international trade, energy markets, even climate change negotiations.
We're talking about a real shift in the geopolitical landscape.
It would be huge. Right now, the Middle East is often seen as, well, a region of conflict, instability.
That's the dominant narrative.
But imagine a Middle East that's known for its economic power, innovation, cultural contributions.
A whole different image.
That's the kind of transformative potential METU holds.
You've got me thinking big. But let's be real. There's a long road ahead.
Oh, absolutely long road.
This is a long-term vision, lots of obstacles along the way.
Definitely.
But the most important thing,
Is that the conversation has started?
and that's where our listeners come in, right?
100%.
Because ultimately, it's up to the people of the Middle East to decide if they want to make this vision a reality.
They need to be informed, engaged, and willing to push their leaders to take those bold steps.
Towards a brighter future.
Exactly.
All right, folks. We've laid out the vision, the challenges, potential rewards, even looked at some historical parallels.
We've given you a lot to think about.
Now it's your turn to dive deeper. Do your own research, think critically, and decide for yourself. Is METU just a pipe dream?
Or a path to a more peaceful and prosperous Middle East.
That's the question.
And who knows, maybe this could even inspire other regions.
And follow suit.
Exactly. After all, in a world that's increasingly interconnected, cooperation, it might be our best hope.
Powerful words. But before we send our listeners off to contemplate the future of the Middle East,
Yeah.
we have one last piece of the puzzle to share.
This is a good one.
A surprising historical parallel that might just change your whole perspective on METU.
It's a mind blower.
Stay with us. We've been exploring this whole idea of a Middle Eastern trade union, METU.
That's a big one.
Huge! We've looked at the potential benefits, the
The
challenges,
challenges are massive.
and we even found some inspiration from history, like ASEAN.
Right, showing it's not impossible.
But now, for the final piece of this deep dive,
This is where it gets really interesting.
we've got a historical parallel that might just blow your mind.
It's a bit of a what-if scenario,
Okay, I love those.
but it's rooted in real history, so bear with me.
All right, you've got my attention. Lay it on me.
Imagine the Arabian Peninsula, way back, over 1,400 years ago.
Long before the modern countries we know today.
Exactly. Back then, it was just a patchwork of warring tribes constantly fighting
Over.
resources, control of trade routes.
Sounds kind of familiar.
Right, not that different from the Middle East today, all those conflicts and rivalries.
So what changed? What happened?
The emergence of Islam.
Okay.
It acted as this powerful, unifying force, created a shared identity, a sense of purpose that went beyond those old tribal divisions.
So it brought people together.
Exactly. It facilitated trade, encouraged cooperation,
And ultimately,
led to the creation of a vast empire stretching from Spain to India.
wow, that's huge.
It was a powerhouse.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So you're saying religion could be the key to METU's success,
Not necessarily religion in the traditional sense.
but the underlying principle.
The idea of a shared vision, a common goal that goes beyond national borders, historical differences,
Like a unifying force.
just as Islam united Arabia
METU could unite the Middle East.
around this shared goal of peace and prosperity.
Powerful analogy, but we got to acknowledge religion can also be a source of division, right? How do you navigate that?
You're absolutely right. And for METU to work, it has to be inclusive, respectful of all religions and cultures.
So it can't be seen as favoring one group over another.
Exactly. It needs to be a platform for cooperation, understanding, building bridges, not walls,
So not imposing a single belief system, but finding that common ground
and building a shared future.
based on mutual respect.
And that's where the international community can step in,
Okay, what role could they play?
supporting those interfaith dialogues, promoting cultural exchanges, fostering tolerance, creating the right conditions for METU to thrive.
Makes sense.
It's all connected.
Okay, let's take a moment to recap everything we've covered in this deep dive. We started by introducing this ambitious idea, METU, explored its potential benefits, and let's be honest, the enormous challenges.
Those challenges are real.
We looked at a real-world example, ASEAN,
A glimmer of hope.
showing that regional integration can actually work, even in a complex part of the world.
It can be done.
And we even went way back in history
Over 1,400 years.
to see how a shared vision can bring people together, unite a fractured region.
Powerful stuff.
We've only scratched the surface, of course.
There's always more to explore.
And we encourage everyone listening to keep researching, discussing, debating all the complexities of
How's
METU.
the conversation going?
Because at the end of the day, the future of the Middle East,
It's in the hands of its people.
they need to decide if this ambitious vision is worth pursuing, if those potential rewards outweigh the risks.
And if they're willing to put in the work,
So make it happen.
it's a collective effort.
And that's the beauty of a deep dive like this.
It's all about asking the right questions.
We don't have all the answers, but we want to give you the knowledge, the tools, to form your own informed opinions.
Think for yourself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into MPU, we'll leave you with this final thought. What if this isn't just a dream? What if it's a glimpse into a future where cooperation triumphs over conflict?
A future where everyone benefits.
Where the Middle East reclaims its place as a center of innovation, culture, peace?
It's a vision worth pondering.
It really is. And who knows, maybe someday, future deep divers will look back at this conversation as the moment the seeds of a more unified, prosperous Middle East were planted.
Maybe we're witnessing the beginning of something truly special.
Until next time, keep diving deep, stay curious, and never stop exploring the endless possibilities of our interconnected world.
Thanks for joining us.
On the Deep Dive.